All right, welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Tonight we got episode 184, all juice, no pulp. Kempe's been killing it for the Kings, as well as he's getting a nod at the Four Nations face-off, which we'll be talking about that as well. Going into a little Joe's whiteboard, breaking down the deep current of stats for this organization. We're just talking about the last 4-game win streak. So you know what to do. Get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. As always, that intro is brought to you by Ezera. Their new song, Blind, out now, wherever you want to download your tunes. Thank you for creating that, Ezera. We appreciate you guys. And I appreciate you too. Welcome back, boys. We're about ready to start a nice little episode here. How have you guys been?
Doing good. Hockey's been fun lately. I'm having kind of fun. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, hockey's fun for sure for me. I got everything going on right now. High school teams buzzing, 2-1 through 3 games. 2 more big games coming up this weekend.
How's Joe's Brant Clark doing over there?
Oh my God, he's running our power plays. So he's
doing what our Brant Clark is not doing.
He's a sophomore. Yeah, the kid's great. The kid's great. I mean, it's you never know how, like, that's the biggest thing. Like, you get these kids, you forget how young they are, you know, for anything from freshman to a senior in high school. And it's a varsity sport. So you get these freshmen and sophomore, they're playing against kids that are like 3 years older than them. And that's a big deal at this age. And then sometimes, depending on the game, it's a lot of people in the arena, and it could be a decent crowd, and it, gets emotional and everything like that. And so you never know how certain guys handle it, especially first-year players. But we've got a few first-year guys that it couldn't be handling it any better. So that makes it a lot of fun. The one that I kept telling about, Lubomir Viznovsky, he's off to a good start too. So it's awesome.
Good.
Yeah. How you doing, Rando?
Doing well. Excited. Last night it was like a journey to watch the game, because for some reason I don't know if it was Max or it was my download, but it was blacked out here because it was a Dallas local game, and then Dallas Stars have Victory. So like I had to watch it on Victory. I didn't have it, even though it's a free app, I didn't have it downloaded in time. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go have a beer and like prep for the show tonight. First bar I went to was having like a Christmas party for a business. And then second one was having a Christmas party. Third one, couldn't figure out how to get the game on. So like I was like walking around town aimlessly trying to watch the Kings play. And finally settled in on a location.
You're in Texas already as it is too. So you're at one of the team's homes.
Yeah. So it was weird. Just Christmas parties filling up different pubs and stuff like that. We have a bar called Nickel City, and they always do like a Christmas themed pop-up. And like I'm talking about people around the corner trying to get into this place. Like it's pretty crazy. So it was a little bit of a chore, but it ended up working out. I thought it was going to be much more dire straits after the first period, but Kings turned it around a little bit, which we'll get into. But before we get into that, we have some fans in here already. Gwendolyn with a little hi, guys. Anthony Carrazzo. How are we feeling, podcasters? And then we got a little $10 holler from Zach, the Kings fan. Happy holiday, boys. Happy that this team is having fun again. Saturday is going to be a big test. I like it. Thank you for the $10. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Gwendolyn right here is every time Edmonds scores, I think of Joe, laugh out loud. Sup, boys? And Gwen, let's talk some hockey. Everybody's feeling festive in here. And then let's see, we had one person in here. Oh, Twitter's teasing a little tinfoil hat time with the Palmieri debate that Russ posted up there this morning. So if we have time, maybe I'll throw on the crown and we can get into some trade talk. But I'm going to leave this the Zach Kings fan. He deserves to have his chat up here for a little bit while we break into it. Kings win 4 straight against some good opponents. there. Showed some coming back from adversity against the Stars, which we never seem to do. We always seem to get our face kicked in with them. And it seemed like it was going to be that way in the first period, 2-0. I almost walked aimlessly back to the apartment, but I decided to stick it out and was rewarded for that. So let's get into the game. Russ, what did you think of the effort? Let's just start with Dallas, and then we can kind of trickle in with the other games.
Yeah, you're spot on. After the first period, it kind of reminded me about the Buffalo game when they lost 1-0 at home. It was almost the same kind of thing. They had three days off coming into a game. The first period opened up, and you just didn't really see too much of an effort that made you believe that they would be able to pull out a win. So yeah, I mean, it was funny because in between the first and second period during the intermission, I go down to the media room, and they have like a soft serve frozen yogurt. So that's like always my thing. Go down there, get some vanilla frozen yogurt, put little rainbow sprinkles on it, and then have a little snack while I'm watching any other game that's on the TVs down there. And Jesse Cohen I ran into Jesse Cohen down there, and we were kind of talking, and I just mentioned to him, I was like, man, it just feels like another one of those games where they're just not gonna be able to pull it out. He kind of agreed with me, and we were just kind of like thinking like, oh man, it's just gonna be another slugfest, whatever. So go back up, start watching the second period, and yeah, they kind of turned it around in that second, and it made you after that first Tanner Jeannot goal, that line had been they started pretty well. They had a pretty solid first period. Byfield was skating pretty well, even though they was kind of mishandling pucks. Although it seemed like everybody was fumbling the pucks. I don't know what was up with the ice. People were just falling around or whatever. But that Byfield line was just kind of zooming around. Jeannot wasn't really making anything flashy happen. It was just going out there using his body and breaking up loose pucks and making a play. And same thing with Fogle. So when the second period happened, they got that goal. Jeannot's bounced off the boards, and then Edmondson got the goal. That second period kind of turned it around, and then the third period, it was Joel Edmondson of all people Warren Fogle of all people doing man, I mean, how good has Warren Fogle been? Like, I knew it would be a good signing, and it seems like that's kind of paid off. That contract's looking tremendous. Seems like whenever the Kings need a big goal or a big play, he's always the one to make it. And that goal was a perfect illustration of what Warren Fogle kind of brings to this team. Just a hard work down low, nice little wraparound. But I thought it was the end and kind of how the Kings kind of showed a lot of resiliency in order to finish that game off. I mean, they were pretty much dominated the rest of the third period. It seemed like they were kind of going back into a little shell, but still trading chances here and there. I know Fiala had a post late too. So the Kings hung in there. It was really the first time all season that I was like on the edge of my seat, that I really felt like emotionally like tied and emotionally invested into the game. And I think the fans kind of sensed that too, where like there were Go Kings Go chants like going on the last like minute of game action when the Stars had the net pulled and they were just shooting wherever, and David Rich was standing on his head. So it was nice to see like the fans really reward the Kings with their appreciation of the hard work and the effort that they put in to get that victory, because it was a gutsy win. And probably the first real big, like maybe signature win of the season, given the team that they were playing and the way that they were able to pull out the victory. So yeah, I was really impressed. It was a good showing, and hopefully they can continue it on Saturday.
Now, how many times over the years have we seen the Kings kind of, do what they do at 5-on-5, which is control the play, dominate the play, and just not score and end up losing a game that they had no business losing, right? This was kind of the other way around. This was a game where the Kings were on the better end of it this time, where they were clearly not the better team. Even Jim Hiller acknowledged that they didn't play like a great game, but they obviously kind of recognized they weren't playing great and found another way. Like they worked hard. They kind of dug in a little bit and just kind of gutted one out, if you will, largely on the shoulders of Rittich, and I think a couple of pipes that Dallas hit. So it ends up being a big 2 points. That's a really good win against the team in Dallas that, like you said, Russ, they've struggled with. I think they get some some input, some goals from some unlikely sources, and it ends up that ends up coming away with 2 points. So I think you take it any way you can get it when you don't play your best game. And again, I think Hiller acknowledged that too in the post game, where you still find a way to win these games even when you're not playing great. And kind of the irony here, Randon, is, you mentioned this little stretch here. They haven't played great in terms of, the last few games, but they're coming away with wins. Generally speaking, that's just, as they say, as the saying goes, as a sign of good team is when you find ways to win, even when you're not at your best. And I think there's a case to be made that they were second best in this. They were clearly second best in this one. Anaheim played them really tough toward the end of last week. And they're finding ways to win these games. So at the end of the day, that's what matters. They're filing 2 points away. Which this way, if they do run into a little bit of a cold stretch, they're banking points right now, so that's big.
Yeah, it's just been the epitome of the King season. Like you can't figure out this team at all. You take the 8 points, and you're like, okay, well, they found some ways to win, some squeaky goals. The power play actually scored a little bit. Brant Clark showed why he was Brant Clark, but then you have some, like last game, no goals really from anybody that you pay to score goals, and they get a W against a really hard-fought team. So, the Jeannot goal was very Tanner Jeannot. Like, that's what you needed from him to muck it up down low. Edmondson seems to hit one of those beamers per, every so often, and Joe rubs his head. I guess that's what we're paying him for. And, the team gets a W. Ultimately, 2 points is 2 points.
Yeah.
And we're starting to find out with this team that this team might be ugly in the way they play or how they get things done sometimes, but they're getting 2 points here and there. They might be losing to some teams that they shouldn't be losing to, and then they look good against teams that are theoretically better than them on paper. So I still think there's a lot to be discovered, and we're kind of peeling that onion back layer by layer as the season goes along.
I mean, if they want to win games with just a slugfest and just hunker down, play defensive hockey, and try to be opportunistic, I mean, they certainly have the players to do it. They don't have the players to go out there and score 5-6 goals a night. I mean, given just the signings that they made in the offseason, sure enough, they're the ones that score most of the goals. But yeah, I mean, Brandon, this win streak, I mean, even before the game, the win streak didn't really feel like it was giving you like a lot of confidence that it was okay, like now the Kings are starting to turn around. And that's why I felt like last night was such a big game, because the game against Winnipeg, I don't want to say it was expected that they'd come out with a strong showing, but I mean, after that disappointing third period that they had in San Jose, where Jim Hiller just called it unacceptable, we've seen this Kings team respond every time that happens. It's happened twice now after losses in San Jose. The first one when they come back home, beat Vegas 6-3, and now this time where they come back home and shut down Winnipeg. And then they had that game in Anaheim, and that was a big game. I mean, kind of the same thing. Like if they had lost that game, we'd be saying the same thing. Like, oh well, here typical Kings team just running the roller coaster, having these highs and lows. But they got that win, and then they got another win against I guess not a very good Senators team. So I mean, it was a 3-game win streak, but even then, you're kind of looking at each win and kind of dissecting them, and it was like. Not too much confidence in there. So that's why it was like coming into this one, I thought this was a good test and a good benchmark to kind of see where this team was, especially after the 3-day break. They had that golf charity tournament on Monday, so they weren't even really they were only on the ice one day. So to come in and have that slow first period, but then bounce back and show some competitive nature and show some emotion and some will to win, that's where the confidence starts to kick in, and you're thinking like, okay, this is the Kings team that I'm sure Rob Blake was envisioning when he made these signings and trades and whatnot, and I'm sure what Jim Hiller's envisioning when he's talking about playing the system, defensive style system, this really grungy style of play. Like that's the game the Kings are looking for. So I mean, I'm sure Jim Hiller was happy when they got the 2 points and showed some competitive nature toward the second and third period.
Joe, if you were to, with the 4-game win streak, what would you say, without looking it up, what do you think the Kings are in their last 10 games?
With the 4-game win streak in the last 10 games,
Mm-hmm.
offhand, I'd have to believe 7-3.
6-4, which is ironically pretty much what the rest of the Pacific is. So even after this 4-game win streak, the whole Pacific is just doing this.
Yeah.
And like the standings haven't really moved at all since the last time we spoke. So, or over the last month, I mean. So it's kind of weird. Like each team in the Pacific is kind of having these streaks and then leveling out. And, right now they're in second. But if you look at the standings there, you have, Vegas 6-3-1, Vancouver 5-4-1, Flames 5-4-1, Edmonton 6-3-1, 5-5 for the Kraken. So it's like all these teams are just right at that 500 or a little bit above it. So it's kind of interesting, the Pacific, and how this is all working out. To throw it back to the game, I thought that it's weird how Fogle, we saw him as a piece for that Fiala-Byfield. Byfield hasn't played up to par. Fiala's been kind of tossed around. And then Fogel's kind of blossomed in a way we really didn't expect, with line mates we didn't really expect either. I just don't know. We talked about a couple months ago where he was like, oh, he can't play with finesse type players. He's going to have to play a little bit more north-south game, even though we want the Kings to play more east-west. What have you seen from his game over the last couple of weeks and how he's being used in the lineup?
I think we're seeing what the player that we kind of expected him to be. He's very north-south. He's got great wheels. He's involved in plays. Like I said a couple shows ago, I think he'll shoot from anywhere. I think he leads the teams in shot attempts right now, in shot attempts per 60. So, he's not afraid to put the puck in the net, but he's involved. Like, he's been somebody that's been involved in shot assists too, and making some passes to the slot. Like, I don't know at the end of the day from a production standpoint what they're going to get out of him, but for the money that Russ mentioned the contract earlier, what's it, 3 by 3 point something? It's under $4 million. He's playing well within that, probably more than that. So the production doesn't have to be huge for what he's making and what they signed him for. So I think he's been kind of as advertised. Really, I think he's been a solid addition to the team. He fits that LA Kings mold of a winger. I think probably said something along it at the time where I like the player. It's a good signing. It's a good fit. I don't know that it does much at the end of the day in terms of moving the needle, pushing them over the top. What is it, what they needed, blah, blah, blah. But in a vacuum, he's a good player and he's in a good spot.
Yeah, he's not a player that you're going to lean on for production or to win you games. But we haven't even talked about his work on the penalty kill.
Yeah,
because him and Byfield, it's really just been 2 units. It's been him and Byfield, and then I believe it's Moore and Deneau, I believe, is the other 2 unit. I'm forgetting now, but yeah, every time I see Fogle and Byfield on the ice, they're killing a penalty. I feel pretty confident. It seems like those two, with Byfield's length and reach, and Fogle with his speed and his intensity and tenacity on the ice, like, they're making a lot of plays happen in their own defensive end, and clearing pucks, and really keeping their opponents from setting up. Really, that's kind of really been the strategy of the Kings penalty kill, is just be so aggressive where the other power play units just can't even get set up or even get a shot on goal. So it didn't really pay off too early, because they got the first power play goal off the Kempe trip, which kind of short things up a little bit in the first period. But man, when I watched those two in terms of Fogle and Byfield go on the ice in the penalty kill, yeah, my confidence level is pretty high that they'll be able to get things done.
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice little wrinkle into the fact that I didn't really see that from Fogle in the signing, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't do much digging into how much he played on the penalty kill for Edmonton, but it was something I wasn't anticipating, and it's a nice little wrinkle to his game.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to dig into this, but just something I've been thinking about today, and Russ had kind of talked about it a second ago, with talking about the 4-game win streak and talking about how, this is what Rob Blake envisioned, when we made these signings and this type of, these type of wins, and Russ saying, if we want to win these games, 2-1, 3-2 type of games, like, hey, they can certainly do that. And I agree that they can. I think so. I would ask you guys, my whole thing with this has been there because they are a dominant 5-on-5 team yet again. They ironically didn't dominate 5-on-5 yesterday, but in general this season they've been an excellent 5-on-5 team, elite defensive 5-on-5 team. I look at this team and I'll put it in a different way because I've always been skeptical that this build is still going to be good enough to get out of a playoff round. I look at it this way: the Kings and Blake and the organization has built the team to win these one-off games. They've built these teams to win NFL-style playoffs, to win an Olympic-style run, right? Like they might go into a Four Nations and beat one of these Four Nations teams in a game, the way they play. Like they're capable of doing that in a one-off game. If they play Dallas and the numbers play out and the gameplay plays out the exact same way as that game, that's a 5-6 game series win for Dallas. Like my concern with all of this is that's great, the elite defense, and they're winning these low scoring games and they're being able to knock off these teams here and there. I just still am like not sold right now. Like I know there's a lot of people pumped about this 4-game win streak, me included, as you should be, because it just further solidifies, okay, we're going to get another shot at this playoff thing, right? See if we can do this. See if we can if they can get out of the first round. But at the end of the day, the issue that I have with playing these top teams is not that they can't win a game against these top teams. It's can you beat them 4 times out of 7? And that is my question. And that I have this 4-game winning streak so far has done nothing to give me hope that they can. I don't mean to like pour cold water on it, but like this is where basically I'm at right now. There's not been anything yet this season that has showed me this is different. Mm-hmm. We've seen this from the Kings. Like we've talked about it too. They're tripling down on what they believe is the way to do it. Are you guys sold? We're still TBD, I assume, but like, do you see where I'm going with that, Russ?
I see where you're going. Yeah, I see where you're going with it a little bit. I think some of it's always been, can we get all the pieces to connect at the right time for the Kings? This team can score. They've shown that they can score in little small spurts when they play off the rush or if the power play kind of gets going. So I think they can win a 7-game series. Just going to depend if all the cogs are moving at the same time. One thing with this team is they're getting a hell of a lot more offense from the blue line. And that's not only from Brant Clark. I mean, Joel Edmondson's putting quite a few goals. We're going to get Drew Doughty back. Spence's game has kind of been a little bit elevated. And you're getting a hell of a season from Gavrikov, maybe not offensively, but to keep the 5-on-5 metrics in there, I think that this team would get a lot more offense from the blue line, which is going to help in a series. Because that's always been the negative to any team that we played, is that our blue line was worse. It might still be worse on paper, but at least we're going to get a little bit better on there. But I still think the sentiment holds true from what we said in the beginning of the season. This team is only going to go as far as QB takes us. And if QB doesn't get back to at least the level that he was playing last year, then I still think we're going to have question marks going into the first series.
Yeah, I'm not really putting any much stock in all these defensive goals, to be honest with you. Like Joel Edmondson taking clappers from the point, going off somebody, that's just pure luck, to be honest with you. Like there's not really any skill or anything. I mean, kind of same thing with Doughty's power play goals last year. It was the same thing. It's like you're just getting slap shot from the point where you have nothing else to do. It's just they happen to go in. Like there's not a skill in that. I mean, not to take anything away from it, but I think. But I'm with you, Joe. Like, yeah, like I would just love for us to just be in April because
yes,
that's why it's like fans like ask me or they say like, are you sure this team's gonna make the playoffs? I mean, yeah, like what's kind of doubt or what's making you think that they won't? Like they're the best defensive team in hockey that's going to win you games, especially when you play up against bad teams. It's when you play good teams on every other day in a 7-game series that's when it gets exposed. And that's like I think I said this to somebody last night. Like, yeah, like I said the same thing I said at the beginning here is if they want to play this grungy style of game and win games 2-1, yeah, they certainly have the players to do it, but will it win them playoff series? And that's the big question. That's where I'm like, I don't want to get too invested and too like emotionally high on all these win streaks, because it's like, okay, well, in the back of my mind, I know the playoffs are gonna get here, and we know what's happened in the last 3 years. And that's why I get so pissed that we've fucking played the Oilers 3 years in a row, because like, yeah, like I'd be hard pressed to say that they can't beat another team besides the Oilers. Maybe it's just the Oilers that they match up bad against. Maybe they match up better against Vancouver, who they've played better in the regular season compared to the Oilers the last few years. Maybe they match up better to Colorado or Vegas or whatever in the playoffs. Like, who knows? But do I feel confident that they'd be able to beat any of those teams in a 7-game series? No, I don't. Like, I'm not going to be. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I mean, we've seen it happen against the Oilers when the Oilers have only made the Stanley Cup final one time in the last 3 years that the Kings have beat them. So it's not like they lost to the best team in the NHL. Those Oilers teams were beat by other teams that were probably better than them at that time. So, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, this is great. And I think that's where, like, I look at other things as the season goes along. I look at Bryant Clark's progression and see where, okay, will he be at his upper, like, potential, or even getting closer to his potential when the playoffs come around, that we can rely on him in certain situations? Is Mikey Anderson just evolving into a next level type of player that we kind of were hoping to see, or Jim Hiller's been asking to see, which I believe, like, Mikey Anderson's been my MVP of the season so far. He's been so good. And like, where will Drew Doughty be when he comes back? Like, what will the scoring look like with LaFerriere, Turcotte, a lot of these young guys, Byfield you mentioned? So I think that's what we have to like watch throughout the season. It's not like, okay, can this Kings team like win games when it comes to playoff times? Like, whatever. Like, I think they'll make the playoffs. They might even be 100+ point team. But will players like LaFerriere, Byfield, Clark, like some of these younger guys continue to grow? And like, how will Edmondson fit in? How will Fogle and Jeannot look with playing with their new linemen or whatever? What lines will find chemistry? I think those are things that we probably should be watching more as the season goes along, and would be enjoying the win streaks as what they come with it.
It's kind of funny how the sentiment of our preseason special young guns is still echoing through the season, and that's the question that's going to be headed into the playoffs. Like, where is the progression of these young stars going to be? What does this team look like in April versus December? Are the Kings going to be a completely different team when it comes to that point? Because usually when you find, like Dallas did last year with Stankoven, like when a young player finds that light switch and all of a sudden is producing at a much higher level, like your team looks completely different. So, Clark is doing that now, but I know as a conductor, we're only in second gear. I mean, we got a couple more gears to go, but, is he going to find that this year? LaFerriere, he got really hot with the goals and he got soft, and then now he's a little bit hot again. Can the people that were paying money can stay consistent enough? Kempe's had a nice week, on this team. So how does that kind of fit into the team, and where's the progression for these young players coming into April?
It's kind of funny for me, because not that I don't think the Kings are necessarily at the level of, like, I consider Edmonton and Toronto cup contenders. Okay. Like, I know that the Kings are at that level, but I think the way that I look at the season is exactly the same. Like, Edmonton fans could not care less about the regular season. They don't care if they finish first in the division or in a wild card spot. All they care is, are we going to the cup? Period. So it does, whatever happens in November through January and into, like, that just doesn't matter. They get into the playoffs, and then that's the only thing that matters. Toronto's the same way. Like, show me in the playoffs. We don't care anymore about all the regular season success. And while the Kings haven't been like one of these, President's Cup teams or teams that have been necessarily cup contenders in recent years, at least for me, the way I'm looking at this season is like, I don't say I don't care and be flippant, but it's like, it's been 3 years in a row of first round exits. Either get me past the first round, or I genuinely don't care. Like a win against Dallas, great, it's awesome. But and maybe this is just I don't want to be like this, but it's just like, are you gonna wait until April to see if this matters or not, type of thing.
Yeah.
I almost can't enjoy it.
It's kind of funny how that is. I mean, I think when we first took that first year, the year after Deneau, or maybe the year after that, it was like you were watching every game with excitement, because like this team is so much better. Like, this team is fantastic. And like, we were watching so much garbage hockey for so many years. And like, you're on pins and needles every single game watching the evolution of Velarde and stuff like that. And then now it's like sometimes on like a rogue Tuesday night, I'll be like, I think I'm just going to watch the first period and then catch the end of it on ESPN Plus tomorrow. Like I'll just watch something else, or like I don't know. Like I don't know if I'm the only one that does that, like and watch the game after the fact. But
shoot, I'm just lucky if I stay awake for it. If I had to watch it in full. But it's like there was a totally different like energy and buzz and excitement for each of the past few years, because even with last year, like there was the Dubois break coming in, and I know that not everybody was necessarily excited about it, but it was a big, significant, impactful addition. Like, how does it work? And we didn't have that this year. We had some nice pieces, don't get me wrong. So I don't know. It's just like fast forward. Can we get to April? But to Russ's point, I got to get out of that mindset and think of, okay, look at other things. Look at what's, some things that are going well, not going well, or some lines or whatever, and things we can try to see how maybe get an idea of how things could play out come April, because otherwise I'm just going to drive myself nuts.
I think one thing we haven't mentioned is like wins are good because this team hasn't had home ice advantage the last 3 years in the playoffs. So
fair.
I mean, if they can come up with a first round, if game one's at home in crypto, I mean, who knows? Maybe that changes things. Matchups are a big thing in the playoffs. So I mean, we got it.
They've been incredible.
They are 9-2-1 this year.
Yeah. So they play really well at home. Hillard certainly likes to mix things up and match up with players that he feels are doing well, and it seems to be working for him. So if the Kings can be top of the division or even the second seed in the Pacific, that'd be huge.
Talk about other things that are they're just fluky, right? Like last year, the Kings set a record for road wins to start the season. They've been one of the best road teams in the league the last couple of years, I think. Now this year, they're 9-2-1 at home, and they can't lose it. They don't even trail at home. I mean, last night was a rarity where they were trailed by 2 at home. Just season to season, some of that stuff is it's bizarre how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
What wasn't bizarre is one of our prospect goalies getting his first nod against Anaheim. So I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Portillo a little bit. What did you guys see from the young netminder against a game where it looks like Anaheim, or a game where Anaheim played us tough?
Yeah, second best goal save above expected among any goaltenders this season for the LA Kings. That's how good that performance was. And credit to Anaheim. They played the Kings really tough because the Kings have owned them and like dominated them recently. And that wasn't the case last game. And so Portillo had to really, be up to task. And it was, one of the better, it was the second best Kings goaltending performance, at least per goal save above expected, other than the Darcy Kemper opener in Buffalo. I thought he was really good. I think to be expected from a rookie goalie, there was some, it appeared anyways, we're not him. So I don't know how nervous he was, but it appeared to be a little bit of nerves, maybe some fighting it early on. But he felt the puck quite a bit early. And I think that helps a young goalie kind of get settled into his start. So I thought he played very well.
Yeah, I mean, that save he made, it wasn't really necessarily like a flashy save, but when I think it was Terry that was all alone in front with the few seconds left in the game, and he just kind of dove out to challenge the shooter. I was like, oh, I love that. I love goaltenders that are willing to commit to stuff like that, especially in one-on-one situations. But yeah, I echo everything Joe said. Seemed really nervy at the beginning of the game, kind of fighting it a little bit, kind of settled in a little as the game went along. I didn't feel like he showed it didn't feel like a dominant goaltender game. If you watch it, it didn't it wasn't like the Darcy Kemper opening night game in Buffalo where it was just Darcy Kemper it's just standing on his head. It kind of felt like Eric Portillo was just playing his position. The puck just happened to hit him. He didn't know where pucks were coming from sometimes, and he was in good position. But I mean, when you're 6'6", I mean, that's really all you need to do, right? Just play positional goaltending, and then you'll end up stopping pucks you might not see. So I mean, it's hard to find any criticism in a win like that for an NHL debut.
Yeah, that's a good point, Russ. To put that into some perspective, it was 1.74 goal save above expected per Evolving Hockey, like, which is obviously, hey, that's good. It's not necessarily a game to like go crazy about. It quite literally is the second best of the season, but to put it to how good that Darcy Kemper performance was, that was like 3.6 goal save above expected against Buffalo. So that I don't know if any Kings goalies catching that this season. Because the Portillo performance was probably right around where, in the vicinity of other Kings goalie performances, but it was just a little bit better.
Yeah, especially when you're playing for a game or playing for a team that allows the fewest expected goals at 60. So
right.
Your numbers are never going to look that great as a goalie.
Yeah.
You know what's also been crazy is that our entire goalie prospect pool has been playing well. Carter George has been playing well. Hampton also got a nod to the World Juniors, him and Carter. So right here, there's Kyle Garcia, our resident expert. Portillo. How do you pronounce his last name? Is it Slakinski? And George, a lot of promise in the net in this pipeline, which is kind of weird because a couple of years ago we were like, hey, they need to draft a goalie, like they need to get it done, and all of a sudden it flips on a dime. It's amazing what. Hey, I disagree with that. I mean,
not in the first round.
Look what we could have had Askarov, and look what he did to us against the Sharks, right? But it's just interesting how this team kind of the ebb and flow of the prospect pool, where we had all these forwards and defensemen, and then you trade away Brock Faber, who's going to be on the USA team, and then you have Helge Grans making this, and the goaltending was the worst part. Now the goaltending is the best part. Just kind of how the ebb and flow of the prospect pool works. I find that interesting.
When you point it out that way, I hadn't thought about it that way, Brandon, but it's kind of crazy.
So let's move it over to our next segment here, which is going to be Coast to Coast. And Coast to Coast is going to be brought to you by Game Time. So I know that people like to get their tickets. The excitement of the game for me is always like, where are we going to sit? What's the view on the ice? And so I've really dove into the Game Time app since they've become a sponsor and see how they've kind of changed the game here on ticket apps. And, they filter out a lot of the fluff and show you all the incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through each individual option. I'm looking at the game here against the Wild, and I'm seeing some options here where the home team shoots twice. 159 on the lower bowl there, 118 mid-level if you want to sit above the ice and see the whole thing a little bit. I really like it, and they kind of throw some of the deals like, hey, this is a super deal. This is a top 5%. These are the cheapest seats here, and then you get that 360 view of the ice. Which I really liked. Hey, what does this ticket actually look like? And you might not be that way in hockey or in basketball, but if you're looking at maybe football or baseball, you don't want to be sitting behind a pole or a slab of concrete and paying some tickets to not even see the game that you came in to see. So not only can you use it for sports, but concerts, comedy, theater as well. All in pricing is something I really like. Nothing's more disappointing when you think you get a good deal and you get to the checkout line and all those fees get tacked on. Lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 100% or 110% of the difference. And Game Time ticket coverage gives you the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, well, I don't know when I'm going to go see a game. I might not want to download the app right now. Well, download the app and put THPN in there when you download it because it tells you where you heard about us. And that $20 off first purchase will be credited to you in your app. So you can save that in there for when you are ready to make a purchase. So download the Game Time app now, create an account, use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for 20% off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Well, so we're going to be talking about Coast to Coast, Coast to the Most here. And we're going to really spend the whole entire time with the Four Nations face-off. All of us are buzzing about this event. It's going to be awesome to watch it. I don't know why there's so many Debbie Downers on X about watching some of the best people play hockey against each other. Like, oh, this is the tournament couldn't be the best as it possibly could be. Yeah. Should Russia be in there? Sure. Should a lot of these other nations be in there? Sure. They're going to be eventually in the Olympics, but this is what we got. This is the first iteration of it. And we're going to see some very quality hockey. And I'm still looking at ticket prices on the Game Time app, and they're still reasonable for a tournament of this magnitude. So I'm going to pull up our little slides here, throw us down to the bottom. So talking about the Four Nations face-off here. And so we're going to kind of go roster by roster. what we kind of think of the team's strong suits and how they kind of match up. So our first team on the list here is Team Finlandia. So if you're watching on a big screen, the roster is pointed there. If you're listening to us in the car, we'll kind of go over the rosters here. So some names that are obviously forefronts in Finland's roster is, Barkov, Rantanen. You have Rope Hintz there, Sebastian Aho, Miro Heiskanen, Isla Lindell. So a lot of names there, and former King Olli Mata there as well. And then they have some top neck goalies with 6K and UC Saros. So what are you guys thinking about this team? What kind of stands out to you? Do you think there was anybody kind of left off this roster?
Ooh, I don't know if there was really any names left off. The thing with Finland, I'm sure this is probably the roster that, or maybe the team that probably has the lowest odds in terms of winning. I mean, compared to the other three countries. But you can never count out Finland. I mean, that's always been the theme with them in every international tournament, just kind of going back to all the World Juniors and even the Olympics in the past. I mean, it seems like Finns always have a solid connection with the players that they bring. I mean, you look at some of these names, and yeah, like Barkov's always one of the best two-way centers in the NHL, just Stanley Cup winner. Rantanen, he's a horse, and this is going to be like a showcase for Rantanen too, who's going to be a pending UFA in the summer as well. So he's trying to make a name for himself in this tournament. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pick them to probably win it all, but I wouldn't count them out necessarily either.
Yeah, I think in an incredibly short tournament like this, if you get this is something where you could quite literally ride a hot goalie, and UC Saros is more than capable of that. And they've got as good a center depth as anybody in this tournament. Like, that includes the Americans and the Canadians. Like Barkov, Aho, Hintz, 1, 2, 3 down the middle is pretty good. So I think they're strong down the middle. They're strong in net. Then it gets a little thin. There's some, that's kind of where it ends. Like the D can be perfectly fine. I mean, obviously Heiskanen, I think, is a stud. I think there's
the Olli Mata Rasmus Ristolainen pair doesn't excite you, Joe?
You know how excited I am about that, Russ. That pair. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, who I am excited about is Juuso Välimäki. I'm really glad he made this team. I'm a Välimäki fan over there in Utah. So it's going to be a hard team to play against. They generally are. So I suspect that they're not going to be an easy out. But like Russ said, not expecting a ton from this team come tournament time. But
I mean, you really only have to win 4 games in a row. And the Kings just did that. So
right. And like I said, the way the Kings play 5-on-5, they can go into this tournament and probably steal a win from one team just because of the way they play defense. So again, Finland may play an LA style of hockey, and in a tournament like this, that could work.
Mm-hmm. It might just come down to the team that gels the quickest, right? Because sometimes finding lines is tough. And Russ said that the Finnish teams always seem to gel really quickly. They all know what, quote unquote, Finnish hockey is from, their development camps from a young kid. So they always seem to gel regardless of firepower. They're the epitome of the sum of the parts is more important, is greater than the individual, players themselves. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up and how quickly they get going. But like I said, their firepower up top is nothing to laugh at. And you look down the middle with Barkov, Aho, Hintz, and Lindell. I mean, that's a deep center core as any. So switch it up to our neighbors in the north. We got Team Canada here. Obviously, Connor McDavid making it there. Nathan McKinnon, Marchand, Mitch Marner. But Seth Jarvis, a little young player, doing well for Carolina, making the roster. Sam Bennett, Sid the Kid Crosby, Mark Stone. I don't know if you can use LTIR for the 4 nations, but he is on there. Cale Makar, the best defenseman in hockey. Where they really struggle is in between the pipes. And so with all that firepower, in the crease, they're a little weak there. Russ, what do you kind of see from this team? It looks like firepower galore.
Oh man, yeah, all over the place. I mean, you just look at you listed the names and forwards: McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon. I'm sure McKinnon and Crosby have been waiting to play in a tournament together, so that'll be fun to see. One kind of interesting wrinkle is Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand on the same team, which is kind of funny given the playoff battles that they had the last couple of years. So that'll be an interesting little. I hope they're on the same line. That'd be kind of fun to watch. Defensively, I mean, how can you go wrong with a top pairing of Taves and McCarr, a pair that already plays together in the NHL? So you don't really need to worry about any chemistry issues there. But yeah, like you mentioned, like goaltending might be the most suspect position of this team. Binnington, Hill, Montembeault. Montembeault's been playing pretty good. I don't know how good he'd be in a big name competition like this. We haven't really seen him in that kind of setting and really in the playoffs. So that should be interesting. I'm not sure he'll be the starter. I maybe I would go with Binnington. He seems like he'd be that better choice in that kind of big game situation. So I know Hill's obviously won a Stanley Cup, so you can maybe go either one. But yeah, that'll be an interesting decision for Canada.
With a roster like this, you're really only nitpicking some things. I mean, when I look at the forward group, this isn't. It is an all-star team, but when you've got guys like Bennett and Marchand and Stone, Konechny, like they got some hard to play against guys too. This isn't just your, a team loaded with skill on all four lines. They're going to bring it, and that's not going to be easy either. I'm not in on the Sanheim selection. I'm not going to lose sleep over that, I guess, if I'm Canada, because the rest of their decor is pretty stacked. So that's fine. But to Russ's point, like, they're not going to get any saves here. And I'm hashtag goalies guy as much as anybody. Not sure I go that route in this type of a tournament. Hey, it's a roll of the dice though, because you got to go with somebody who's playing the best at the time. I think, like, I don't think you can sit here today if I'm Canada and say, well, Jordan Binnington's going to be the starter, which I don't think he should be. I think he's the third best goalie on this team, but it's probably likely that he's the starter. If they can get a goalie to make some saves, it's just tough to beat. But when you look at the other goalies in this tournament, they are so not even close to the other teams that genuinely could be a big enough difference maker. The fact that I don't know who's stopping the puck over there.
Yeah, it just sucks for Doughty because I mean, I clearly see a spot for him on this roster. Like he would be perfect for this team. Somebody who can kind of just reel everything in if things go wrong on the back end. And like the thing I've always noticed and loved about watching Doughty, he plays the game like almost like a point guard in basketball, where it's just like he knows when to speed things up, he knows when to slow things down and kind of reset and have his teammates take a lap or whatever, change lines or anything kind of happens situationally. He just reads the game so well. So it's just unfortunate that he wasn't able to get healthy enough to be on the roster. I'm
definitely disappointed that there's no, that whether it's Bouchard or Mackenzie Weegar, like there's some just Noah Dobson. I don't know. I love those guys. And I know Sanheim's having a fine season. Parayko's having a good season too. But I don't know. I think there was some better options that they left off. But if they lose, I don't think it'll be because of that.
You think it's just a size thing? Like they just kind of shake up the defensive makeup a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the U.S. roster we'll look at here in a second. I mean, there's some sandpaper on that lineup, so they're going to need it.
The next team over here is Team Sweden, where our lone representative Juice will be there. Adrian Kempe, as you see right there, along with ex-King Victor Arvidsson, Philip Forsberg, Gustav Nyquist, the young buck Leo Carlsson getting a nod there, Lucas Raymond as well, Zibanejad. But this defense core is stacked. We got Rasmus Andersson, Rasmus Dahlin, Victor Hedman, Erik Karlsson, Matthias Ekholm, Broden, Gustav Forsling, and they got some decent netminders as well. Sweden could easily make a run in this tournament.
Yeah. I mean, that's a back end. I love that decor. That's as good as it gets. And that they're good and they're solid. And Gustafson's having a great season in Minnesota. Markstrom's playing pretty well in Jersey. They're fine in net. Not great. They're fine. The forward group is a lot of nice players. that ain't. I don't think that that's enough of a forward group to get past like the United States or Canada, and even Finland's better down the middle, I would argue, than Team Sweden is. So I don't know.
A lot of wingers on there.
Yeah, it just depends. Like I don't know what to make of it. Like you see Victor Arvidsson's name on there. Is he going to even be able to play? Lindholm's not having a great season in Boston. Zibanejad's been atrocious with the Rangers. So can he be a thing? Nyquist hasn't had a great season in Nashville. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, there's definitely some good players. Obviously, LA Kings, Adrian Kempe is there. He's having a good season. Pettersson's up and down. I love Jesper Bratt. I just don't know, though, if there's enough here. William Nylander's, of course, a stud. I don't know if there's enough here offensively with at least the way some of these guys are playing this season.
I really like this team. Like if I don't want to call them an underdog because it's hard to call. Maybe it's a strong word to use considering it's only 4 teams. But, I mean, everybody's kind of looking at USA and Canada as the 2 favorites here. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it off. I mean, I really like this team altogether. Besides maybe the goaltending, a little iffy. Their forward cores I actually really love. Joel Eriksson Ek, Lucas Raymond, and Adrian Kempe were actually aligned at the World Championships in the summer, and they were outstanding together. So I'm excited to those 3 will probably be paired up again. I'm excited to watch them. I think their center depth's okay. Like, I mean, Eriksson Ek, Pettersson, William Karlsson. If Lindholm's your 4C, like whatever, you definitely got some scoring on there with Forsberg and Nylander. So yeah, there's a lot of juice up there.
The betting odds have them third.
That sounds about right.
The betting odds have them third at plus 490.
Oh, they're third plus 490?
Yeah.
I could take those odds. I could take that number. But I mean, Joe, like their defensive core,
so good.
I think it's the best in the tournament. Like,
yeah, it's so good.
I've always been a huge Hedman fan. So any lineup that has him on that's always going to get that extra like nod from me. But then when you circle him with players like Dahlin, Forsling, Brodin, Anderson, Ekholm, and even Erik Karlsson, who's having a down year, but never going to count him out in an international tournament like this. Like any pair you put out there, you're going to have stud on stud on stud. Yeah. So we've had question marks for the last 2 with, I mean, there was Finland has Olli Maatta and Rasmus Smith-Salainen, and we had our concerns about Canada's back end. Like, there's no play on this defensive core that I'd have question marks about. Like they're stacked at that part.
Agree there.
They might win some games with just on the goalie and defensive alone with this roster. The team with the second highest odds and our nation's team right here, Team USA, strong in net with Ottinger, Hellebuck, and Swayman. Forwards include Boldy, Connor, Eichel, Getzel, Hughes, Kreider, Larkin, Matthews, Miller, Brock, Nelson, the Kachucks, and the Trocheck there, and then the defensive core of Faber, Fox, Hannafin, Hughes, McAvoy, Slavin, and Wierzniewski. This team looks stacked as well. That's why they're favorite or second in the odds. Where do you guys kind of see the bright spots here for this roster, or do you think they're the most complete roster from top to bottom?
I think the bright spot here is probably in net. I don't think that's any secret. Hellebuck's one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the NHL. Then you back him up with Jake Ottinger, who's probably the second best goalie in the NHL, or at least top 3, and then Jeremy Swayman, who won a Vezina trophy. So, yeah, that's definitely the strong suit. Forward core, it just seems like a typical American forward core. You got the Kachucks on there who are going to do their thing. Chris Kreider, Jake Getzel, guys are just going to go straight to the net and try to bash and clean up the garbage down there. And I like their some wingers on there with JT Miller, Kyle Connor, Jake Getzel. They're going to score some goals. So, yeah, and Jack Hughes. Can't forget the Hughes guy. So, defensively, I like. I think they're missing maybe like I don't know. There's something missing about the defensive core that I can't quite put a finger on it. Like Quinn Hughes is great, obviously. Slavin I've always loved. Werenski's great. I like they're missing like a Doughty type of like veteran defensive player. I feel like here, even though like I know Slavin's got some some miles on him. Same with Adam Fox, Hannafin as well. But I would love to see like I don't know. Like I know in the past, like in the Olympics, they had like the Brian Rafalskis, like those aging guys who had the experience that kind of brought it a little bit to these rosters and these international tournaments, helped them out quite a bit. But I'm not going to say it's like I'm not, like I said, we're nitpicking here at like a stacked roster. But if I had to choose anything, it'd probably be defensively. I'd be a little concerned about the U.S. team.
I love the decor. I think the decor is great. And even with Noah Hannafin as 7, like I mean, I think that's a hell of a decor, actually. I'm in there. I just think, somebody just had it up, Rand, and you put the comment up. Tage Thompson should be on this team. And because I think when you look at the center group of Matthews, Eichel, and then it's Larkin, Trocheck, I just think there's a miss here. It could to go Matthews, Eichel, Thompson, Larkin, or Larkin, Thompson, I just think is so much better and so much deeper. I just don't think you needed Trocheck and or Kreider and or Brock Nelson. Like all 3 of those guys are fine, but I Thompson brings just so much more than I think all 3 of those guys. I think that's a miss for the United States, but they're the deepest roster. I think top to bottom, right? When you're looking at forwards, defense, goaltending, I think this is the most complete roster in the tournament, which is probably why they're the favorites.
They're second. So Canada right now is plus 135.
Okay.
And USA is 175.
Okay, sorry. So I actually would. I think when you look at how much better Connor Hellebuck is than anybody Canada can throw out there, I think that is a big difference maker. I mean, I don't think there's a weak spot on that back end. Again, I can nitpick the Tage Thompson thing down the middle and the bottom 6, but this is a very complete roster, and it's exciting to see. We've waited for a long time, the United States, to try to catch Canada, right? And this is really the first opportunity to see, have we caught Canada? Because it's, as much as you look at, Matthews, Eichel, and Hughes and all that, there's obviously thrilled, you get all excited. It's just Canada, you just realize, has McDavid and McKinnon, and they still have freaking Crosby doing it. But this is awesome. This is going to be one hell of a matchup, because this is what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for like the Eichels Matthews era of the United States centermen to see if they are the team to finally surpass Canada, and we'll at least get a taste of it in this tournament.
I've at least just been waiting for an opportunity to root for a Kachuk. And it'll be interesting to see like how these countries like gauge this tournament for the Olympics, because this is great and all. Yeah, we love it. I'm super stoked for it. I'm excited for it, and I hope that USA wins. But yeah, like the Olympics is like the big thing. That's like where you get your gold medal, obviously, and that's where you got your other teams like Germany, who's got a great team. Switzerland's got a great team. Czechia's even got a great team. So yeah, I'm excited for this, but I wonder like how the countries will kind of utilize this as like a gauge to see like, okay, which players played well here? Will they take them to the Olympics for the next year?
When is the Winter Olympics? Is that next year?
To 2026. So it's
26. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the year
following
after.
February.
Whew. Gonna be fun.
Was there what are your guys any there was a lot of talk, would we see a Connor Bedard make the team, or Macklin Celebrini? Obviously that we didn't see any of those guys, basically, is what I'm getting at. Any surprises there for you guys, or
No. So for me, the way I thought about that, because like I saw other people like mention Caulfield as a name that maybe got snubbed for USA, and it seemed like maybe they were going for more like, okay, like let's like allow like players that would have been on past Olympics like the opportunity to wear like the country sweater, right? Like especially in this, like, because as much as we want to like nitpick these rosters and like get all up and excited for this, it's still really like an exhibition kind of. Like there's no real like winning and like whatever. There's not a lot behind it. So like, let's give the opportunity to players like Nelson and Kreider and some of these other players on Canada's side. I think that maybe should have gotten the opportunity to wear their country's colors in the Olympics that maybe hadn't got the chance. Let's give it to them now. And then we can reevaluate the year after to see if like a Bedard or Caulfield or Celebrini would have gotten the chance to get on the Olympic roster in 2026. So that's kind of how I read it.
I mean, and Bedard is 1 year in the league, you know what I mean? And you got Celebrini, who's a rookie, you know, and I understand that. And that center depth is stacked. I mean, you'd be fighting for fourth line center behind Crosby and McKinnon and he who should not be named with McDavid. But I don't know. I mean, I think the USA team, yeah, there could have been some snubs, but I also like the fact that the USA, you know, kind of has those. Like I feel like we have. I mean, I guess Marchand brings that kind of style, but like the annoying goal scorers and the Kachucks, and kind of have that sandpaper for the USA team, and we're gonna rub your nose in it type players. That used to be all we had, and now we have scoring to go with that. I think the USA team kind of has, like we said, the most complete roster of this team can play any kind of hockey game. They can play a dirty hockey game. They can play a high scoring hockey game. They have the goalies to win a 1-0 or get super hot. You know, like even if, you know, I don't know what the coaches are going to do. Like, are they going to start each goalie for one expedition game, like to get them time? Because like you said, Russ, it's not the Olympics. It doesn't really. There's no medal for it. So like, is each goalie going to get a start in the round robin? If so, the USA definitely has the advantage there. Like how each team kind of plays this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that'll do it for Coast to Coast. We're going to bring it back here for your Kings hockey, but thank you for listening to that. Four Nations Tournament is going to be pretty awesome. We're going to flip it over to our next segment, which we haven't done in a while, but, you know, the bald man himself has been stacking these stats away, and we're going to be doing a little bit of Joe's whiteboard. All right, Professor, teach me something.
There's a lot of good stuff, but I want to start with Jacob Moverari and the season that he's putting together so far. He has been, you see, you've got the graphic there from Hockey Viz. I highly recommend for anybody that isn't on that site to go check it out. His expected goals against per 60, you see a ton of blue there. That's a good thing because that's ice cold are the opponents for the LA Kings as they approach the LA Kings net. He's been awesome. And actually, as there you see there in the bubble above the tuna, aptly put together there by Brandon, when you see among players with minimum 85 minutes, so I should say this was put together before the Dallas game. Moverari is fourth in the NHL, not just amongst defensemen, in the entire National Hockey League in expected goals for percentage. He's been utterly outstanding in terms of suppressing shots, even against Dallas, by the way. If you were to go look at that Dallas, the statistics from Dallas, right, in a game where Dallas controlled pretty much everything from shot attempts to expected goals, go down the line, Jacob Moverari had a 74.7% expected goal share. Jordan Spence was right there with him at 64.9. So Moverari has just been really good. And, you know, we've talked about this at length over the last few years where at what point do they just let this kid play? You know, they've gone out and spent money on players. One of them, 4 years they gave to 3.85 per year, who's not as good as Jacob Moverari. Continues to just impress every single time he puts the LA uniform on over the last few years. None of these metrics that we're seeing from Moverari are new. He's been really good for his entire career. I don't understand why they've gone out of their way to keep him down, and they're signing players that are not as good as him. And all he does is come up and play well. Last year he came up, played well, was praised. This year he's come up, played well, and fortunately Jim Hiller. Now again, this team has plenty of defensemen, so they bring up Moverari and they just immediately thrust him into the lineup, and he's, you know, more or less in a top 4 role once again. He's playing fine. He's playing really good, and so I'm I was as excited as I want to be about what we're seeing from Moverari and the fact that he is getting this extended look here. I just can't help but wonder that when Doughty comes back, are they just going to do what they do and just send him right back to Ontario because they signed a guy who's not as good as him, and so that guy has to play because of his contract. It boggles my mind how good Jacob Moverari has been this year in the NHL, but in his career in the NHL. And only now are we getting kind of an extended look.
Yeah, it was crazy. Even in the last night's game, I was watching and it seemed like every time like something positive was happening or a good play happened for the Kings, like Jacob Moverari was on the ice. He was a +2. And I look at the time on ice after the game, he only played just under 13 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay, that's surprising. But I think the thing I noticed most with Jacob that's maybe given coaches and at least Kings management like a chance to say, okay, maybe we should play this kid more. He's being a lot more physical, and it seems like he's filled out a little bit, put a little bit of weight on him. So I think, judging by how this Kings team likes to play and the players that they've signed, I'm sure physicality is something that they're be like, oh, look at the hit he just made or whatever. So I'm sure that's going to open their eyes a little bit. And yeah, like that's given Hiller the chance to play Moverari more. And I applaud Hiller. He's not the one giving out the contracts, but he's the one giving out the ice time, and he's giving Moverari all the ice time right now. So kudos there.
Yeah, I'm in on Moverari, and it's great to see him get a look here.
We've been pumping his tires for years now, and I'm excited that he's actually getting a run, and maybe this will be enough for him to get a contract elsewhere and find a permanent spot in the NHL. On to the next slide here is offense per contra. So contrasting stats here. On the left, we got the top 5 LA Kings with primary assists per 60. And then on the bottom here, we got the top goals for expected, sorry. So the snake-bitten goal scorers here on our team. Joe, break this down for us, my man.
So we'll start on the top with the primary assist per 60. And again, all these were put together prior to the Dallas game. So some of these may have changed a little bit. But in general, when I look at the primary assist per 60, Alex Turcotte leads the LA Kings in here. And he's pretty instrumental in my shot assist tracking as well, when it's just shot assists or even slot passes. So, there's times where I'd like to see, we said this a lot last year with PL Dubois, where I'd kind of want to know down, and I wouldn't mind seeing Turcotte between guys like Fiala and Trevor Moore in that, in something along those lines. Because when you're looking at a guy who's producing per the ice time that he's given, he's involved in plays with his shot assists and his slot passes. Alex Turcotte should be playing with some more skilled players. And why not see if he can hang in a top 6 role as a center? I don't know if he can play 2C right now. Admittedly, I don't know that. But I don't think they have anything to lose when it comes to, offensively or anything like that. And I mentioned with Moverari, Randon, that he was in the top 5 in expected goals percentage in the NHL. Turcotte was 7th. So he's answering the bell in a lot of different ways. So he leads the team in primary assists per 60. Other interesting names on that list: Brant Clark, still there doing what he does. He's 3rd. And Andre Lee is on this list as well. So I thought that was interesting. Now, to the other side of the coin, goals above expected. So players that, this is the bottom of the goals above expected. So players that are just not scoring right now, despite they're scoring well under their expected goals, I should say. Fogle is on this list, though he did add one, of course, yesterday against Dallas, so that's going to help his numbers a little bit. But boy, if you look at the bottom 2 on this list, these are 2 guys that you just need to get going. Phil Deneau, Quentin Byfield are bottom of the Kings in terms of goals above expected. Now, Alex Turcotte is here, and I just sang his praises in primary assists per 60, but it's okay if he's a playmaker, right? If Phil Deneau was leading in primary assists per 60, I wouldn't be having a conversation about moving Phil Deneau, but he's not scoring and he's not setting up. So that's the problem with Phil Deneau. But when you look at goals above expected, Phil Deneau may not be expected to score a ton of goals, but as a second line center, you kind of need him to chip in a little bit more offensively. And, with Quentin Byfield, I know Jim Hillard talked about, how that line was good yesterday with getting in and getting out of the forechecks and, using their speed and their size. And he's really talking about that's a really good third line. That ain't what Quentin Byfield's here to do at this point, guys. Let's just be honest and call a spade a spade. Quentin Byfield's got to start producing. This ain't going to work. And he can't be second lowest on the Kings in goals above expected all season. It's got to change.
Yeah, I thought last night was one of his better games in terms of Byfield, but yeah, we still need more. Like, that's not what his par is. It needs to be producing and assisting and scoring and whatnot. Like, it can't just be going in there and getting in on the forecheck, making plays or whatever, and then going off for a change and passing it off to his other players to score. Like, no. Like, you got the contract, you got paid $6 million per year. The expectations for you are here and now. There's no more excuse, so you got to keep performing. But yeah, it's funny seeing Turcotte and Ferrier at the top of the primary assists per 60, because it's like, you think about it, even Clark with there too. Like, this Kings team was, we talked about the young guns ran in at the beginning of the year, and it seems like the young guns are kind of carrying this team a little bit in terms of when they need crucial scoring or crucial plays to happen. Like, it seems like Turcotte, Ferrier, Clark, those guys are constantly in on pucks. And I was looking at the goals above replacement list by evolvinghockey.com, and the top 3 players, number 1 was Adrian Kempe, number 2 is Alex Laferriere, and number 3 is Alex Turcotte. So those 2 guys are getting it done on that end. And surprising name that I saw that leads the defenseman in goals above replacement for the Kings, Jordan Spence. A guy who's had maybe kind of an odd year and maybe he's struggling a little bit. He's doing good in that department. I know it's just more or less analytics under the hood, and people that are watching the games maybe are expecting more. I'm certainly expecting more, but those are some good numbers to see. And I think he's been a lot better lately, being paired with our guy, Big Tuna, Jacob Moverari, since he's come up. So I'm excited for what Jordan Spence has been doing over the last few games as well.
Yeah, I want to touch on Spence a little bit because I'm a little surprised. I guess I'm not. I guess I am, and I'm not so shocked at that stat from Evolving Hockey. And the reason I say that, Jordan Spence, even if you went to Natural Stat Trick and just look at his defense partners and who he's played with and who he's played without, Jordan Spence, as long as he's not with Mikey Anderson, guys, his numbers are fine. His numbers are and in some cases, his numbers are quite good. As long as he's not with Jordan Spence for some reason, like, it just didn't work. He's been pretty good away with anybody else. So while I guess maybe I wouldn't have expected to have him lead Russ, I guess I'm also the reason why I'm kind of hesitant a little bit is, like, he's actually been pretty good since they moved him away from Spence, whether it's been with Gavrikov, he's been good with Moverari. So I guess to the fact that his underlyings aren't as bad as maybe people think they are doesn't surprise me, because I think he's been pretty good away from Spence.
It feels like Spence away from Anderson. It feels like his worst games have been with Mikey Anderson. Yeah, and maybe that's just asking. I know Hiller's gone back to that a couple times, but he hasn't since in quite some time. And I think maybe that has been coupled a little bit with the recall of Jacob Moverari and the strong play with those 2. So yeah, that's been good to see. Joe, I got one last stat for your whiteboard here.
Yes.
Guess which defenseman on the Kings currently leads them the last 10 games in goal share? That would be number 6,
Gotta be
Joel Edmondson. He's been on the ice for 7 goals compared to 2 against at 5-on-5. That's first on the team among defensemen, 3rd among all players behind only Kopitar and Kempe. So should we be giving some praise to our guy, Joel Edmondson here? Like, I don't know. Like, I was looking up some numbers and he's playing pretty well lately.
I thought you said goals from the point don't matter.
No, these are on ice numbers. So while he's on the ice, the Kings are scoring and they're not getting scored on. Well, I guess that's probably the whole reason we play, right?
Sure. I'll say, like, I'm not going to go. Again, I'm a little more I'm a little more process. And, like even just look at last night. I know he scored the goal, 11 to 20 in attempts when he was on the ice. Not for the Kings, by the way. 8 to 3 scoring chances when he was on the ice. He had a 40% expected goal share. So I'll take it, Russ. I will take it. That your numbers, and it's better that that's happening than not happening. I'm not going to go out of my way to. I need a bigger stretch. I'd like if that was combined with, holy cow, he's not hemmed in his own zone every game, or holy cow, like the process result, the process stuff actually looks a little bit better. Then I'll start to come along, but I don't know. I don't think I'm there yet. Admittedly, though, I haven't looked at these last, what was that, 10 games, I think you said?
Yeah, last 10 games. Yeah.
So, okay, I haven't looked at the 10 games, and maybe when it comes to shot attempts and expected goals, he's playing better than I'm giving him credit for. Yeah, I'm going to need some more convincing.
We almost got him, guys. We almost got him.
I think an interesting name on this list is Trevor Morris on both lists. And we said that his 8-game point streak was kind of like the most, disguised 8-game point streak ever. And like, it was, even I was on the podcast like, this guy sucks. And then Russ was like, he's got an 8-game point streak. Like I didn't know that until this morning. It's just like, man, like you really don't see it. And like snake bitten. It seems like Turcotte's he got a nice goal, like where he just buried that 2-on-1 the other day. But he seems like he's hit a lot of posts this year, or like had opportunities for goals where it's been kind of weird. So it's nice to see that even though the next guy we're going to talk about in the next slide is kind of leading this team, look at all the young names on here that are contributing to the offense and have been the most consistent players on the ice. It kind of gives, as Russ was saying, like pick something positive about the season, because the season's kind of been up and down. It's been kind of a little weird. Like, look at the positive. I mean, Alex Turcotte was a forgotten forward. Some of these, people were saying trading for peanuts. The most consistent forward on our team by far. LaFerriere, kind of a underrated 3rd-round draft pick who has only gotten better and more consistent with his game all around. Brent Clark's a god, so we don't really have to touch too much on him. But you look at these names on here, and it kind of gives hope to the next iteration of the LA Kings. We thought that it was going to be Byfield leading that charge, and it should be, and we're not letting him off the hook, but you can't win with one player. And it's nice to see these complementary cogs, for the next wave of Kings, having good returns.
I'm glad you mentioned Trevor Moore, because he shows up as somebody in top 5 in primary assists per 60, yet he's also in the bottom 5 in goals above expected. And obviously this is a guy that scored 30 last year. So definitely need to see him finding the net a little bit more, but at least he is contributing in other ways, right? He's still getting in the box score with his assists. So there is some production here, but obviously with more, we'd like to see him find the net a little bit more.
I like this. Kyle Garcia says, we need to get a GoFundMe started so we can all buy Joe an Edmonton jersey for Christmas.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right. The next slide here is going to be called Kopitar, the Immortal. And so you're looking at the base stats there, 8 goals, 22 assists, leading the team in points again, on pace to have his 2nd best statistical season ever at the young lad age that he is. And then some career stats under there, plus 11, he's plus 105 for his entire career. Plus minus is not a huge stat, but when you're that consistent for your entire career, we're just, he's immortal. I mean, every single year that we think he's going to fall off, he gets better. In his offensive numbers that are at not an all-time high, but pretty close there. And Joe, you have maybe a look into why that might be.
So I was, something that we've talked about for a couple of years here as he's gotten a little bit older is, will we start to see the Kings, trim down his special teams, but especially his penalty kill, because those are much harder minutes. And although, in watching the games, you can see, Russ mentioned before, you've seen a lot of Byfield and Fogle, you've seen a lot of Deneau and more. So, you just maybe you're not noticing or as much or whatever. But when I was looking at when I was doing the pluses and minuses for the month of November, that article that came out or start of the week, something like that, I had noticed. I was like, that's interesting. Kopitar's penalty kill, time on ice, and so I happened to look at it. And so he is averaging just over a minute per game at time on ice, which is sixth among LA forwards, not among LA players, but sixth among LA forwards. When we look at just last year, no forward played on the penalty kill more per game than Anze Kopitar. He had a minute 50 per game on the kill last year. It's down to just over a minute. That's a big difference. And you do wonder if just taking some of those, again, these are hard minutes. Penalty kill is a lot of stopping, a lot of starting. You're trying to win a puck battle on a wall, maybe to get it clear. You may be blocking a shot here or there. These are harder minutes, and he's playing much less. And like I said, he's the sixth utilized forward on the penalty kill this season, when just last year he was the first. So he is getting his penalty kill time definitely reduced, and you wonder maybe it's part of the reason for him having, as you said, Brandon, he's pacing over 90 points right now, which is awesome. So it's great to see, and I'm with the amount of the way the forward group that the Kings have, this probably could have happened a couple years ago. They have these type of forwards that should be perfectly fine at killing penalties, particularly when you have a guy like Deneau who's still great at faceoffs, even if some other things aren't going well. He's a good guy in the faceoff. So, I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting stat. That was kind of my favorite of all of these, to be honest with you, because at least for me, anyways, it hadn't clicked to actually see how much less he actually is playing on the penalty kill when he was the most utilized forward on it last year.
I mean, that's been his story of his whole career, right? He's he probably could have had so many, we're probably missing at least 200-300 points maybe if he would just maybe focus a little bit more on the offensive end, but he's still so focused defensively and so wanted to help on the penalty kill. How many superstars have we watched the last decades or so in the NHL that just don't want to step on the ice during the penalty kill? I'm sure there's a ton, but Kopitar is just the guy he is. He's so much focused on the defensive end. That's, in my opinion, he's one of the best, if not the best, two-way center in the NHL history. It's just, incredible what he's been able to do. Last year was only the second time in his career that he was under 20 minutes per game. I think he was 1930 or so, and I think this year he's just over 19 again. So that's good to see. Hiller's been able to keep his minutes down. It certainly feels like, with Joe saying here, that the penalty kill is probably a big reason for that. I would like to see that continue. I know last night was the first time it'd be this season that he's gone 3 straight games over 20 minutes in time on ice. So it'll be interesting to watch how his ice time kind of ebbs and flows throughout the season as we go along here, because 30 points in 26 games, nobody saw this coming. Even and I'm sure he just continues to surprise. It's amazing.
Awesome.
He's incredible.
Look at that bargain at $7 million.
Seriously.
Yeah, it is. He's the best player. He's been probably the best player on the team. It still is the best player on the team. Just keeps on trucking.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if he got over 90 points and then maybe wins a Selkie this year. It'd be kind of interesting to see how that works out. It just shows how lucky we are to watch good players, and that's what you want to see when you have a team. And I wasn't a Kings fan for a long time, but he's definitely been the most iconic King since I've been watching, and probably will go down as probably one of the most iconic Kings of all time when it is all said and done. So that will do it for Joe's whiteboard here. So we're going to take that off the screen. We're going to get into some comments that I thought were kind of good, maybe answer some questions here. So we're looking at this one right here. It says, do we think Kaliev is actually going to get any minutes? Looks like him and Thomas will be making a return soon. What do you, Russ, what's the word on maybe timetable for them to come back? And where do you think both those players kind of fit in?
So Thomas skated in a regular jersey today, per Zach Dooley. I wasn't at practice, but Dooley reported that, so that's good to see. I would be surprised if he got any time in. I I don't want to say I haven't been impressed with Thomas, but maybe we were expecting a little bit more from him this season. He just really hasn't been that type of player yet. Who knows? There's still a long season, so he might get his playing time soon. So hopefully he'll be
Trevor
ready.
Lewis on IR, so there's a spot open.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity there. With Kaliev, I would expect him to get a conditioning stint in Ontario. So once he's good to go, look for him to get some playing time with the Reign, get a couple games in, and then get called back up to the Kings. But like you mentioned, with Trevor Lewis now being out 4 to 6 weeks with his own injury, that certainly opens the window. I would feel like for a Kaliev to step in and maybe help out, at least maybe on the power play and get some minutes. Because I mean, I don't know if this is still the same kind. We're in the same situation that we were last year with Kaliev and management, where they just don't want to play him. It seemed like everybody was, hey, let's let bygones be bygones and let's start fresh, because that's certainly what Hiller said at the beginning of camp, and that's kind of what Kaliev echoed when we talked to him. So, yeah, like if he's healthy and he's ready to go after his conditioning stint, I would love to see the Kings try to get a spot for him in the lineup, because I know they're on a win streak right now, but I could definitely see a spot for him on certain lines here or there.
I will be surprised if we see. I don't know. This organization, and I don't know how much of it's been Hiller. I don't know how much of it is just the organization, but I just will be surprised if Kaliev gets any sort of like extended play here. I mean, I'm sure he'll get a couple of games. Maybe if anything, just to let other teams know he is indeed healthy. He can play, because I don't know. They haven't been willing to play this guy as recently as last year, so I'm just not sure that we're going to see much of Kaliev.
Well, I wasn't expecting to do it tonight, but we got it must go with the fans want here. Anthony doing Russ was teasing a little tinfoil hat segment with Palmieri as a possible player at the deadline. Russ, what are you thinking? What prompted you to put that in there? Was it just to stir up the Twitter sphere, or where do you think the merit is in maybe acquiring a player like Palmieri?
Hey, I'm stirring it up a little bit, but I certainly feel like this Kings team is in desperate need for a right shot premier scorer, at least a right shot top 6 winger. I mean, I was watching the power play last night, and they had Adrian Kempe running point again. They had Brant Clark in the position that Alex Laferriere had been playing in at the circle, and it didn't really work out. They just looked out of sync. There was no cohesiveness there. It's just like, they're just so desperate to find a right shot player to put in that situation, and they don't have one yet right now. I mean, as good as Alex Ferrier has been playing right now, I don't see him being as an option in the top power play unit. So yeah, I was just kind of been looking around. People have been asking me like, oh, well, which forwards you've been looking around at? And I was watching some of the games today, and I saw the Islanders were getting shut out by Seattle Kraken 4-0. I look at their lineup and their record. It's not looking too good over there on the island. So, I mean, Kyle Palmieri, he's a right shot forward. He's 33 years old, so he's on the back end maybe of his career. But he's only got 1 year left on his deal. It'd be a rental if you did trade for him. He scored 30 goals last year. He's already got 10 goals this year. I don't know how expensive he'd be. I'm not trying to say the Kings should trade a first-round pick for any player probably this year. But, man, if the Kings are looking like a pretty solid team come trade deadline, they're sitting comfortably in even maybe the top spot of the division, or even the second spot in the division, where maybe they might look to make some noise. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and try to gauge the rental market, and maybe Kyle Palmieri is a name that comes up.
I like Palmieri. I think he's a player. I think he can score, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I like the tinfoil hat, Brandon, and I think along those lines, I was going to mention this with Kaliev. Kaliev feels like he's going to be a guy that ends up in Pittsburgh type of thing, because they're looking for guys in that low to mid 20s, because they don't have any draft picks. They haven't had any draft picks. They're going to obviously do what they can to maybe compile some, but if they can also find some players that are in that kind of age range that maybe could fit. We saw them trade for Philip Tomasino, a 23-year-old out of Nashville. trades like that could happen. So I could see Kaliev being attractive to a team like Pittsburgh, where, he's a post-hype prospect, still only 23 years old. So maybe another team is looking to give him a fresh start. Be curious to see if something like that happens as we approach the deadline.
Yeah, I know we're past the coast to coast segment, but it's like hockey right now. The NHL is so crazy. Like in terms of like, you just look at the standings. Like what we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, like how the Flyers were just like not playing well. They're in a playoff spot right now. Like the NHL, like Nashville, like I don't know what. Like I know Shankmaster mentioned in the chat, like something's got to happen in Nashville. Like they lost again. They got, I think, shut out by Montembeault and in Montreal. Like there's
Pittsburgh's won 4 straight. Pittsburgh's won 4 straight too. Russ,
yeah, and Chicago fired their coach for some whatever reason. Like the NHL is a crazy situation. It's a crazy league at the moment, and like I don't know what to make of any of these teams. Like even Edmonton, I know they're killing Columbus today, but yeah, like it's a wild league right now.
Got another
Buffalo
question.
has lost 4 straight. They were up 4-0 on Colorado. Lost.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that game
at home.
Wild.
Zach, the Kings fan coming here, feels like Danault might be moved at the deadline, especially with him changing agents. I know Russ brought that up. His contract this year is, still $5.5 million, but it goes from no trade clause to modified no trade clause this year. So he has to give 10 teams, gives the Kings a little bit more avenues. Is a player, do the Kings have to move out salary to get a bigger name? Does that kind of work? Does Turcotte allow them to? But that kind of weakens them a lot in the center ice. I think that has to do a lot with how Byfield is playing at the deadline. Do they get a center back in return that gives them more firepower? Like a Malkin or something like that, that has a year left on his deal. It'd be kind of interesting to see if he is not part of the plans, or if the agent was really something more than just him wanting different representation. It'd be interesting to see what he would get from a team, because he would seem like a modified no trade clause. He would probably put a lot of contenders down there to try to win a cup. So is it a hockey trade that we're going to be getting for a Danault type player? It just kind of, it'd be interesting to see if it did happen, what that kind of package would look like.
I think if Byfield and Turcotte were playing better in the center ice position than they were now, we maybe talk about this a little bit more and give a little bit more thought. But I think, at least from a Kings perspective, like I don't know what Danault's, obviously his opinions are on whatever. And yeah, the agent thing it is interesting. I thought it was interesting. But I think from a Kings perspective, like they need to know if they do want to win, because with Byfield struggles in the way he's been playing, like that gives me really no confidence that he can be a 2 seed for the Kings right now. And then with Turcotte, he's kind of been up and down in the lineup, even though I think he's been playing really well. They don't really seem too confident in putting him back in the center ice position, at least on the third line center, or even fourth, whatever. So yeah, like if those 2 players were playing much better, I could see them maybe moving a Danault to kind of elevate the ice time of Byfield and Turcotte, but that's not really the case. So I think that's something maybe we could talk about in the summer, and for a team that could be looking for a center. But I would be surprised if Danault gets moved now.
Yeah, I would be even more than surprised. I'd be shocked. The reason I say it is because, I mean, Russ, you mentioned earlier, like he's one of the top penalty killers, and though he's not producing, he's an elite defensive, maybe elite's heavy, but he's a really, really good defensive center still, and the Kings value that more than they value offense, quite clearly. So I don't think he's going anywhere. And I think the conversation in the summer probably only happens if they, were to miss playoffs or get bounced in the first round again.
Yeah.
But this isn't a team that he is exactly the type of player they want. He's a great defensive forward, kills penalties. The offense is limited, but the Kings have shown they don't really care about that. And so even if Byfield was playing better, I don't know that this is really even a conversation midseason. I really don't.
Yeah, I like I think the last 4 games, I know last game he didn't have any points, but at least with Deneau, it seemed like that goal that he scored at home to Winnipeg kind of rejuvenated him a little bit. I love the comments that he made after in the post game where he talked about how he had like a chip on his shoulder. Even he realized and recognized the struggles that he's had, at least from a production standpoint. So he had a 3-game point streak going into last night's game. He didn't have a point last night, but hopefully we see him start to turn it around because he's an important piece for his team if they do want to win at least a playoff series.
For sure.
Well, I think that'll do it for tonight. This podcast has been brought to you by our last sponsor here, and that'll be DraftKings. It is hockey season, and it's still got that new car smell. The new action is still heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started on DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Look at the odds here for tomorrow night, and some interesting stuff here. If you want to bet for the Ducks, even though they're underdogs against the Wild, you can do that. They're giving you a goal and a half. Over under is 6, so maybe make a little parlay going on there. Obviously, odds are subject to change. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. That is if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you just bet $5. Only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-9-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age restriction and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. Well, boys, it's been an interesting 4 days in Kings hockey. Another big matchup against the Wild. We're still peeling back the layers, boys. What this team actually is, how much progression we're going to see from the young guns. I want to appreciate all the fans that were in the chat today and all that you listen on in your car on the way to work tomorrow. Please hit that like button on the way out. That helps us out with all the algorithms. We want to continue growing that pod well past the 1,200 subscribers that we crossed recently. So thank you for all the new listeners as well. Catch all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Joe put out a little nice one there earlier this week. Those keep flowing out there with a couple new writers that we got this year. All the prospect news and rain news coming from our resident expert, Kyle Garcia. Follow our Twitter handles. And I know, Russell, you got on Blue Sky recently. I think Joe did as well. I'll probably start a new one over there. So whichever avenue you prefer, the handles should be the same, right? NHL Russell over there for you?
Yeah.
Okay. And JW Paterino over there as well?
Yep.
Okay. Well, then maybe Rando Commando might find himself on the Blue Sky here pretty soon. Please take use of all of our great sponsors here at DraftKings and at Game Time, code THPN. Kings are the Pacific. The start of December, we'll see where they end up towards Christmas time. Thank you guys. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.